I've been struggling. The last few months have been a difficult period of my life. My levels of stress have been extremely high. My just sense of general sense of being happy about where I am in life has been on a downward spiral. I've been developing bad habits, giving up good habits. I'm sure you've noticed. I posted a lot less videos on my channel. And that's all connected. And so I've been going through a period where I would say I've been on a bit of a downward spiral. And this is a video I want to make to talk about it, partly because I think a lot of people who are watching this are going to relate to it. I think, sadly, the majority of people are on some level of a downward spiral. I think that's just, that's how it works. For most people, things are slowly getting worse, whether it's in terms of physical fitness, whether it's in terms of money, whether it's in terms of dating, spiritual fulfillment, whatever it is, self-esteem, all these things are slowly going down over the years for most people most of the time. That's the sad truth. And I've been going through a phase where that's really been happening to me, where things have been getting worse in most areas of my life. But over the last month or so, I've kind of pulled away from that and I've started getting on an upward spiral. I've started getting out of all this negativity, these bad habits, negative mindsets, depression, all these kinds of things, anxiety. They've been getting better and I'm starting to make progress. And I want to talk about why everything went south, why everything was going in the wrong direction, and how I've managed to start moving things back in the right direction, because I think a lot of people are going to relate to this in one way or another. With that said, let's get started. A few months ago, I started experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety, and I don't honestly know exactly why. You don't always know what caused you to start feeling more anxious or stressed or whatever. It just started happening. And it got to a point where literally just walking out of the house would make me feel dizzy. I'd feel a sense of dizziness, like I was about to fall over. It got to a point where even just laying in bed, I would feel like I'm running out of breath. And of course, I would start thinking, oh, maybe I got long COVID. Maybe I have, some lung cancer or something like that. I had these kinds of thoughts. And now you might think, well, those are not very good symptoms to have, dizziness and difficulty breathing. It was the perception of dizziness and the perception of difficulty of breathing. To be clear, I've had these things many times since I was 18. I've had these same symptoms. Anxiety can do that. Anxiety can do crazy things. I've had full-on vertigo, and then I went to the ER and they said, oh, it's just anxiety. So not everyone watching this is going to have anxiety or hypochondria or those kinds of things, but it's basically just an extremely high level of stress, right? My level of stress was very hard. And what does this make you want to do? It makes you want to avoid doing things that are difficult. So I would go out to bars and clubs to talk to people less. I would leave the house less. I would make less YouTube videos because talking to a camera, believe it or not, it's a stressful, difficult thing to do. So all the things that were going to the gym, stopped going to the gym. So all these positive habits, I'm doing less of less, and my world is kind of shrinking, and I'm spending more time just watching Netflix in bed, just scrolling through social media apps, things like that, just doing things that I would consider entropy, things where you're in a passive consumer state. And the more I did this, well, guess what? The anxiety, the stress, the depression, they got worse. They got more intense. They became all-consuming to the point where I'm not really getting anything done. I'm not moving towards any of my goals, and I'm actually moving farther away from them. I'm gaining weight instead of losing weight. Instead of making more money every month like I was, the money's starting to go downhill, right? All of these things are then making me feel shittier, right? Affecting my self-esteem. And then it makes me want to do even less. So that's the downward spiral. You feel emotions that you don't like and that make you want to do less, that make you want to stay inside more, work less, etc. And then you start acting different, right? You start giving up good habits and adopting bad habits. And then you feel more stressed because you know your life is going downhill, and then you do more bad habits. And that's how the downward spiral works, right? It's this feedback loop where things get worse and worse and worse. It got to a point where I was feeling really depressed, really anxious. And as a side note, this really makes me think a lot of anxiety and depression is a feedback loop based on your mindset, based on your behaviors that we create and that we have the power to break out of. So I'm getting more and more depressed, more and more anxious. I don't want to make videos. I don't want to do anything. And I think that's a lot of people because it's so easy, especially in the modern world, it's so easy to coast. I still was getting enough views on my YouTube videos, enough sales that I don't have to work. Maybe my health's getting worse, but I'm not morbidly obese. Maybe my social life is getting worse, but I still have girls that I'm talking to. I still have friends. It's not horrible. It's getting worse, but it's still bearable. And then eventually, 2, 3, 4 years down the line, you're looking back and like, how did I get to where I am morbidly obese? I have no friends and I'm broke. That's how it happens. It sneaks up on you, right? It's just like if you get in better shape. If you're with someone every day, they're not going to notice that you got in better shape. But if you've been away from, say, a family member for 6 months, you see them, they're going to be like, holy shit, you got in way better shape. These things happen very slowly and outside of our conscious awareness. So my life was getting worse, and I think a lot of people can relate to this because we've got TikTok, we've got Instagram, we've got YouTube. When you're stressed, we always have two options. One is we can do something productive, do something to reduce the stress, solve problems, right? If you're stressed about being lonely, you can go out and start meeting people, or you can watch Pornhub, or you can scroll through Instagram or message a girl on OnlyFans to feel like you have some kind of relationship. So there's always an easy way out, especially in the modern world. There's always a way to temporarily relieve your stress, but it makes the underlying problem worse because you're avoiding it, you're escaping it. And so this is true for every area of life. It's true for fitness, it's true for your financial success, it's true for your social life. And the reality is, it's so much easier, it's so much more comfortable to get the instant gratification of doing something on your smartphone, of playing a video game, of consuming content, of avoiding doing the difficult things you would need to do to actually solve the problem, that we get stuck on a downward spiral. That's what modern society makes the default. It's so much easier because the reality is, if you've been avoiding socializing for years, the idea of going to a bar and talking to people, that's going to be very stressful, very anxiety provoking. It's very easy to say, fuck that, I'm gonna do this instead. It's easier and it gratifies me just enough, right? It's like eating hot Cheetos. Does it really give you nutrition? No, but it's good enough. It still gives you that satiation that you wanted. So I was getting to a point where if I wanted to go out, my anxiety was so bad that I would drink to get rid of the anxiety, to get rid of the stress temporarily, which of course then makes the anxiety worse the next day. It makes the problem worse in general. But it's getting to the point where I'm drinking too often, I'm eating poorly, I'm not being productive. Everything is going in the wrong direction. And recently, fortunately, I've been moving back in a positive direction. I've been getting back on an upward spiral, and I want to talk about how I did that. Now, one thing I did is I made a routine that I would do every day after I wake up. And I'll talk more about the details, but it's pretty simple. It's just writing a daily journal, meditating, things of that nature. It just takes like 20, 30 minutes. But having something I do when I wake up that's a positive habit, it really made a difference to where the start of my day is on a good note and there's some momentum, so it's much easier to keep things going in a positive direction. Whereas what I was doing before is I would wake up, open Netflix, watch mindless YouTube videos that have no value, just entertaining videos that are pointless, meaningless, that are just a distraction. And then I would end up doing more lazy things, more unproductive things, and I would go on a downward spiral. So that really helped. Secondly, I started building small positive habits. I just committed to do a few things for like at least 5 minutes a day. One would be playing drums. Another one would be working on a YouTube video for at least 5 minutes, working on a product for at least 5 minutes, working on an email, little things like that, just small positive habits that would build momentum. Then at the end of the day, I would feel like I've accomplished something, like I'm moving in the right direction, which then gives me more motivation to take more action the next day. That's the upward spiral. right? You get positive feedback from the sense of accomplishment that you did something difficult, but you got a reward from it. You're making progress towards your goals, and then you want to take more action. And then eventually, things that initially were very difficult and very stressful start to become enjoyable, and you actually look forward to them. You look forward to taking action. You get into a flow state by taking action more and more as you build these habits. And I think that's kind of the key mindset, is realizing that doing difficult things is difficult, but it creates momentum that makes those difficult things become easier and eventually become enjoyable, as long as you have the discipline and patience to get through that initial phase where it doesn't feel like anything's working, it's difficult, you're stressed, etc. The last thing I want to talk about that I did that has been very helpful, and it's something that's a little bit obscure, it's a little bit unusual. People have a lot of people believe it's pseudoscience, but it's actually self-hypnosis. I downloaded this app, it's called Reverie, and it's where a clinical hypnotherapist helps you break bad habits like drinking. So I've been listening to that every day to quit drinking, and it did not immediately make a profound difference, but over the weeks, I found myself drinking less and less. There's such a huge component of our self-esteem when we're doing habits that we know are bad for us, that we know are self-destructive, and we just keep doing it anyway. Because you don't feel in control of your life, you know that you're on a downward spiral, it's going to affect you. But every time you make progress towards breaking those habits, so every night that I would go out without drinking, every time I would resist the temptation, then I would start feeling more confident and start feeling a sense of momentum. I think quitting bad habits is just as important as building good habits, and getting to a point where I don't feel a need to drink has lowered my stress and anxiety. And now when I go out, I don't feel that dizziness. I don't feel like I'm out of breath. I don't have all these negative symptoms. And so that's turning everything around to where I'm getting on an upward spiral. So yes, I've been going through a very stressful phase of my life. Things have been just going downhill in most areas, but that is how I've managed to turn things around. And who knows, maybe I'll get back on a downward spiral next week. It's entirely possible. I'm not saying that I fixed everything permanently and my anxiety's gone, my stress, I'm not saying that, but that's how I've changed direction from a downward spiral to an upward spiral. And there's a profound difference about how you just feel in your own body, how you feel when you look at yourself in the mirror, how you feel at the end of the day when you know you are moving in the right direction. It's not about accomplishing some specific goal, but you know you're moving in the direction towards achieving the success that you want in life. And that could be anything. It could be spiritual success. It doesn't have to be making more money and getting more bitches and those kinds of things. It can be that, but it's internal, based on what you want to achieve in life, based on who you want to be, based on the difference between who you are and the ideal version of yourself that you want to become. And if you're moving farther away from that, then you naturally are going to feel like shit, and you're going to feel shittier and shittier over time. You should, right? If you didn't feel like shit, well, then guess what's going to happen? You have no incentive to not just be a total slob who becomes obese, broke, alone, and that life, it is depressing, as it should be. But every day that you sense that you're moving closer to that ideal version of yourself, you just end up feeling so much better in your own skin, and you feel a greater sense of gratitude. You want to give more as opposed to just wanting to take. But it does require going through challenging things that you don't want to do. But when you look around you, you mostly see people who are not leaning in to doing things that are difficult. They're not pushing themselves at all. They're taking the easy way out. And just look at their faces. Look at the way they walk through the world. Look how miserable they are. But that should be an incentive, that should be motivation to stop taking the easy way out. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it insightful. I hope you got something useful out of it. And if you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel and leave in the comments section if there's any way that you feel like you're on a downward spiral now. Talk about what's happening and how you plan to turn it around.